We are thrilled to introduce Melissa Lewis-Duarte. Melissa is a stress and resilience coach who didn't just learn from a textbook. She navigates her own way through POTS and vestibular migraines. Today, she's sharing the real deal tools that she used to find balance. We're diving into nervous system regulation that actually works, self-compassion for those high pain days, doctor's appointment preps to keep your cool, and low capacity hacks for when you're running on empty. Welcome back to Autoimmune Adventures. If you are living with chronic illness, you have probably been told to just manage your stress 1,000 times. If it were only that easy, but rarely does anyone show you how to do that when you feel like your body is on fire. That is why we are thrilled to introduce Melissa Lewis-Duarte. Melissa, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, so we're glad you're here, obviously, but I want to start at the very beginning because I think it is important that your story is one that I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think it's something that our audience will recognize in themselves.
Yeah.
So you were told to manage your stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we hear a lot, and no one really explained how to do that. So what did you feel like for you at that time helped?
Yeah, well, I thank you for even asking and for bringing this conversation to people. I think it's really important that people feel validated when they go to the doctor and are told, well, you really need to control your stress. It's like, yeah, sure, but how? Like, what can I actually do? At the time that I had the POTS diagnosis, and then it was maybe 6-8 months later, the vestibular migraine diagnosis. It was sort of the third doctor to say, it's time to get a hold of your stress. And, but they didn't really give me support in how to do that. And so that's why I launched into sort of my own research. I have a psychology background. I did organizational psychology long before I had a family and had these diagnoses. And I wanted to heal myself. My doctor had said, at this point, we're going to have to put you on medicine to control your anxiety. And I'm not against that. I've done it in the past and it works. But I wanted to see if I could do all those things that I knew I should be doing, but just hadn't been able to follow through on. And that's when I decided to commit to 10 minutes a day. And it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be any one thing, but it was going to be 10 minutes a day that I would do something to calm myself down, to bring myself a sense of calm and peace. And that's really how working on calm started. And I started really just throwing myself into learning, how do we do this naturally? How do we implement this in a way that feels sustainable and not overwhelming? I had a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old at home, and then a newborn who had spent 6 months in the NICU on life support. And so I didn't have a lot of resources. And so I think it's important for people to feel empowered in these moments, that even though the doctor may not have the resources to tell you what to do or how to do it, there is a lot of good information and good practices out there on what you can do, even for just 5 to 10 minutes.
I really love that because I think that people, when they hear manage your stress, it's monstrous, because when you're under a lot of stress, how do you manage what you know you have to do just to keep on living? When you're a mother of 3 young children, you don't just say, well, I guess I'll just have to find a way to set them aside while I figure out what to do for myself. You don't get to do that. That's not an option for you.
Yeah.
So at that point, how do you manage something when you're already so overloaded? So it's such a blessing to hear you say it just takes a few minutes.
It does.
You just have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it has to be something that can integrate into your life, to what you're doing on a daily basis anyway. It can't feel like this thing where I have to get make arrangements for my kids and I have to have a quiet corner. We have to find these things that we can do while we're doing the dishes, while we're driving the car, while we're sitting in the doctor's office. So it has to work with the life we already have and not feel like this one more thing to do on the to-do list. Someone who has, chronic illness, they don't have any more space on that to-do list.
Agreed. Well, and one of the questions that I had for you is with some of your diagnoses, like I think of POTS and some of the dizziness and the racing heart and all the things that a lot of times doctors would actually dismiss as stress or anxiety.
Yeah.
Do you find that these exercises, and maybe if you don't mind doing a short demonstration of one, can they help you in the midst of those spells of, dizziness or heart palpitations or all the things that come with those conditions?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's part of what was so hard with POTS, which is where I would sort of get up particularly if I'd been going from laying down position to upright position. So it's when you change positions that it can really aggravate. And I luckily didn't have changes in blood pressure, just in my heart rate, but I would get sort of tachycardic and it's scary. And then my anxiety would start. And then the more anxious I got, the faster my heart would get. And it sort of becomes this thing where there's a loop between the body and the mind. And so what I found really helpful to learn about in those moments was the way that our body is interpreting, or our brain, I should say, is interpreting everything coming from our body. And if we start to understand that all of these signals come from the body and they go up to the brain, and the brain is simply trying to make sense out of the world around it. And make predictions for the future and keep us alive and safe. And so if it is receiving information with our heart racing or really short, shallow, rapid breathing, it interprets that as, oh, I've been here before. This is danger. This is stress. This is anxiety. And it only serves to increase it. But as soon as I realized, wait a minute, I can change the signal going to the brain by controlling my breath, it was a real game changer for me. It's hard when someone says, oh, just take a deep breath, you'll feel better. And that can feel dismissive if you are anxious or experiencing a lot of stress. But instead, if you can sort of flip the script of, wait a minute, I can change the signal by just changing. Our breath is like the only automatic response that we have control over. And so if we can change that signal, we can actually tell our brain, wait a minute, you're safe, you're okay. And so breath work was really where I started. For me, it was changing that signal. And so it doesn't have to be meditation. I think that can overwhelm people or feel too intimidating. There's not a right way to do it. It's just finding a breathing pattern that brings you a sense of ease. And so for me, that was learning to breathe down into my belly, to take a little bit longer breaths. And I particularly like a breath pattern of a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale. It's really that simple. And if you're sort of in that triggered moment and anxious, a lot of times if you start counting, you'll realize your inhale and exhale is like 1, 2, 3 seconds. And it makes sense. The brain is interpreting that as stress and anxiety. And so simply just lengthening that can give you a lot of power in the moment.
Great.
I also love the idea of that focus, because when we focus on paying attention to how long we're breathing in, then we start to notice how tight our body is.
Yeah.
And the deeper we breathe, the more we have to loosen our body to get the breath in. So when we start to do that, we feel that ease that comes from our lungs receiving oxygen all the way down into them. It's magical. It's magical what it can do for you.
For sure. And I think understanding that changing your breath within the framework of, by doing this, I can actually reinterpret what's happening in my body. I don't have to automatically respond with, oh my God, I'm anxious. How do I make this sensation stop? Instead, I can say, oh, I'm anxious because I'm taking these short, shallow, rapid breaths. Let me try to change that. It's a real reframe. It gives you so much more empowerment.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think with certain conditions, especially because I have not been officially diagnosed with POTS, but I definitely have frequent dizziness And I find for me that the breath work, if I am feeling really dizzy, if I just sit down or lay down and breathe, that helps me not get to that, where you start to get the tunnel vision and you're like, dang, I'm going to pass out because it's going black here. Like the deep breaths are really a big help with that as well.
For sure. And I remember sort of in the throes of the initial experiences of POTS, when you're feeling like that, the last thing you want to do is lay down. It's almost like a white knuckling. Like, I got to get up. I have to be on guard the whole time. I don't want to allow myself to relax. And if we can just allow ourselves to lay flat, to take a few deep breaths, or even just sit down if you're not comfortable, it increases the sense of surrender in the moment. And that can be really helpful as well.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
I was going to say, isn't it wild that we have to tell ourselves to surrender to our body, to our breath? But everything you have said from the beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, I needed this today. I think you're here because I needed this today. And I am sure if I needed it, our audience needs it as well. I am really struggling through perimenopause right now. And I feel like fight or flight is my status quo. Like, that's just where I live now. And so when you're saying 10 minutes a day, like, I can commit to 10 minutes a day. When you're saying let's work it into little things that we're already doing in our life so it doesn't feel like another thing on our to-do list, that is what I need. That is what I need. That is, I'm sure, what our audience needs, because we have mostly women listening to us, mostly women around our age group who are experiencing very similar symptoms. And even if it's not the dizziness and the heart racing, it's just the chronic inflammation that you live with when you have autoimmune disease. It's just there. It's always there. And stress is like fuel on that fire. It's just pouring gasoline on the fire. So it's so important that we talk about this. And we've been talking about this a lot on our podcast lately, because I think that we live in this world where we're just inundated with all this stimuli from every direction. And we weren't taught to let our brains rest. We weren't taught to let our bodies rest. And I think that this practice, what you teach, is so vitally important right now. It's so vitally important. And again, maybe it's just because me and what I'm experiencing these days, but I'm like, oh yes, let's do this. Okay, so I'll get to a question here eventually, I promise. I think that many of the people who are listening are hearing that our nervous system is constantly overloaded, right? But our body is always speaking to us. We like to say our body whispers before it yells, or whispers before it screams at us. Our body's always trying to communicate with us, and we have to learn to listen. So for somebody who's feeling overwhelmed and depleted already, like, where do you even start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, I want to reiterate or just reinforce that it doesn't have to be breath work. If that doesn't speak to you, or you find that doesn't work for you, there are so many other ways to managing stress and building resilience. And so, one of them, especially for someone who's depleted, I would say start with just 5 minutes outside in the sunshine. It sounds simple, but I always tell people a lot of what I teach our grandma probably knew, but somewhere along the lines, we have become really divorced from our bodies. Like, we don't feel our sensations. We don't do the things that grandma already knew to do. And we weren't taught this, you're right. And so, just getting outside for a few minutes of sunshine, not only do you feel better, it's a sense of relaxing, but if you understand the science behind it, you can really appreciate the fact that you are doing something important, even if you're just sitting there. And our eyes are designed to take in the light from the sun. And our body knows if the sun is at a sunrise, if it's at, full noon, and if it's at dusk. And it will release hormones in our body to help regulate our circadian rhythm simply by the type of light that's reaching our eye. I mean, it's really amazing. And so if you are having trouble sleeping, it's a great idea to get outside for 5 minutes in the morning, no sunglasses, not through the window, but to actually sit and allow that sunshine to reach your eyeballs. They're extensions of our brain. That's a simple thing that, doesn't require a whole lot of attention. It's really just, or, energy. It's really just a change of scenery for a few minutes, and 5 minutes can really make a difference there. Another one that I tell people, particularly if they're feeling alienated and not having a lot of energy, but they are feeling a little lonely, is to reach out to a friend. That's something you can do from anywhere. You can do it while you're on your way to an appointment or on your way to work or that sort of thing, but to foster a sense of relationship and support, that can be another way in. There's even just sort of thinking about what gives you a sense of flow. So maybe you love doing like a crossword puzzle, or you love playing a game, or you love reading or something. It's not like you have to, set aside an entire hour. It's like, give yourself a 5-minute break to do something that you enjoy. That doesn't necessarily require you to move if you don't have that energy. So I could go on all day there, but there are so many good science-based things that you can do to take care of yourself in the moment, even if you don't have a lot of energy.
I really love that. And I also love that you're concentrating on realistic tools instead of perfection, because I'm telling you, we don't have room for perfection here. There's just no room for that. So what you've already shared a really good 5-minute practice by stepping out. What is your favorite go-to during the day when you're feeling that uptick in stress that we all feel at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, when we realize we haven't accomplished what we needed to for the day and we're in a state of panic over it? What do you do in a moment like that to just bring it back to a place of reality and realization that perfection does not need to exist?
I thank you for saying that, because I think it is really important for people to understand there is no such thing as perfection. And particularly if you've been dealing with a physical condition, you don't need any more pressure on you. You're already probably beating yourself up, asking yourself, why is this happening, wishing it away. And so we really need to think about sort of the stress that goes on between the ears and that dialogue. And so a lot of times when I find myself in those moments towards the end of the day, and, I had 100 other things on the list that I wanted to do and I didn't get them done, is to really think about the way that I'm talking to myself. And this, is part of the self-compassion piece that I think is really important for anyone who's dealing with a physical condition. And it's starting to think about what conversation you're having with yourself and what you're telling yourself. And it's really helpful. I encourage people to say it out loud, because oftentimes we would never talk to anyone else the way that we talk silently to ourselves. And so it's helpful to develop a practice if you find yourself beating yourself up, starting to ruminate about all the things you didn't get done, is to just start talking out loud to yourself. And once you start hearing that, it brings awareness, and then start shifting it so that you're actually talking to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. And I think that that's a helpful exercise, not only to stop mental chatter because you're talking out loud now, but also to build that self-compassion piece and thinking about being kind to yourself, and remembering that it's never going to be perfect. We'll never clear all the decks. The to-do list will never get done. And so there's a little bit of surrender there as well.
I love that a lot, because I'm a coach, and one of the things that I teach my teenagers that I work with is that your brain is a trash talker. It likes to talk trash. So you need to learn how to make it your friend.
I love that.
Because then it treats you the way you deserve to be treated, instead of the way that a bully would treat you. You shouldn't let your brain be a bully. And so I love that you say that there's a need for self-compassion. I really think we need to learn to exercise more of it.
Yeah, I think it's important. I love that you're teaching this to kids. I think that I wish I had learned a lot of this when I was younger. I try and teach my own kids, but anyone who has teenagers or preteens know that they don't want to learn anything from you as the parent. But it is really helpful for them. getting back to sort of like that end of the day, I also love to do a few minutes of breathing. It's not something where I have to, turn everything off and find a dark room. I literally will do it at my desk or as I'm driving in the car, just practicing a deep breathing. And that is so helpful to just kind of transition from work mode to maybe home mode. Another thing I try and do is get outside if possible. Arizona's pretty hot, so sometimes at 3 p.m. it's a little hot, but that's about the time, I'll go walk to the bus stop instead of drive in order to spend a few minutes outside without my phone. Because it's helpful to walk, you allow your eyes to move side to side, you take in the world around you. All of a sudden, what was very myopic, like looking at the phone, looking at the computer, thinking about your day, your to-do list, your world opens up when you go outside. People might underestimate the idea that when you have a big sort of horizon in front of you, it helps to keep your smaller things in perspective. That is a signal to the brain as well. What we are seeing, what we're taking in with our 5 senses does change our emotional landscape.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, I have lupus, and so time in the sun is challenging for me sometimes, but I make a point, especially in Texas where it's nice and warm, but I make a point of either going early morning or evening, as the sun's rising or as the sun is setting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my ways that, like you said, at the end of the day, that I like to kind of just relax and let go of stress is to enjoy the view, because we get some beautiful sunsets out here, but also I live on a small farm and I have animals. So if I sit down to enjoy the sunset, I'm probably going to end up with cats on my lap. I'm going to have my dog come over. I'm going to have chickens running around and coming up to me. And I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, having a cat on my lap and just petting my dog, that is a huge stress relief.
For sure. Pets are really important. And that you can spend a few minutes petting. I have a client I've been working with, and at the end of the day, for her, it's really important that she remembers to pet her dog. And that may feel really simple to someone from the outside. But when you take a moment and you're sort of sending the signal to yourself, I'm pausing for myself. This is my moment of peace. It reinforces that signal to the brain. And we know petting the cat, petting the dog, it releases some of those really feel-good hormones, and can be a really important part of self-care.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about, self-care and different things, but what about kind of one of the phrases we see a lot nowadays is emotional regulation, which I think comes into play a lot here too. Do you mind explaining that to our audience in kind of simple terms and how that comes into things?
Yeah, emotional regulation is an important part of dealing with any sort of, I think, physical condition, as well as for those of us who feel overwhelmed by our stress and anxiety. And when I talk about emotional regulation, what I mean by that is really starting to understand, what do my emotions feel like? What do they mean? And what can I do when I experience them? And it, again, sounds simple. Like, of course I know when I'm angry. Of course I know when I'm anxious. But a lot of times we use, really high level, we might say, I'm angry in the moment. But really, if we think about it, if we get more to a granular level, we are triggered because we're hurt, or maybe we're afraid of something. Maybe it's getting to something that's a little more specific. And when we get emotional clarity, having a better understanding of what the emotion is, it can be really helpful, in actually processing and moving through, so we don't get stuck in that emotion. And so there's one exercise I encourage people to do is to print out and have an emotion wheel. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this before. You can Google it. I've got one on my website, but it's a wheel that really breaks down our emotions into much more specific experiences. And by simply looking at that and really thinking about what you're feeling, thinking about where you're feeling it in your body. And sometimes when I start working with someone, they say, I don't feel them at all. I have no idea where I'm feeling it. And so we start talking about, okay, well, if it were a color, what color would it be? if you had to carry it in your body, where do you think you would carry it? If it were a texture, what would it be? And that can help people to start feeling things that maybe they have, cut off for a very long time. When we feel them in our body, again, we can process it and move through. It's almost like the brain senses, oh, you validated this experience for me. Now I can move on. And so there's a process called name, notice, nurture that I encourage people to do. So naming is to get more specific, get some clarity around the actual emotion that you're feeling. Notice is to notice it in your body. How does it affect you? Is it in your shoulders? Is it your stomach? Is there pressure behind your eyes? Do you feel hot or cold or sweaty? Those sorts of things. And so you start to notice it. And then nurture is the last component. It's like, what do you need right now? If you're feeling fearful, for example, maybe you need to give yourself a hug and help yourself to feel more secure. If you're feeling lonely, maybe you need to reach out to somebody or pet your cat or your dog. So really think about, what can I do in the moment to help me feel better? It's not necessarily to make it go away or to solve a problem, but how can I nurture myself and make myself feel better? How might I nurture a child if they told me they were feeling this way?
So I just was reading, it goes right along with what I was reading the other day about processing emotions, and how if you verbalize them, how much easier it is to feel them and then let them go. So my understanding is that emotions, like, we feel like it's going to be there and it's going to be there and it's going to be, but it will pass. It will pass. We all know that in theory, but sometimes the big, hard, scary emotions just feel like they're suffocating us. And there's so much power in naming it and noticing where you're feeling it. And then being kind to yourself. Like, I love that nurture is the final one. Like, be kind to yourself. Okay, so I'm feeling this anxiety, or I am feeling overwhelmed, or I am feeling inadequate, whatever it is. I'm going to get an emotion wheel. I'm going to start doing this because, again, perimenopause. My emotional regulation is absolute garbage right now. You can ask my poor husband. Anyway, there's real power in naming it.
Yes, for sure.
Power in that and verbalizing it. Or if you can't verbalize, write it down. Write your feelings. Like, if you hold them all in, they don't get processed, right? Let it out in whatever way you can let it out. That will help you process it. And I think that comes into play with, art and with journaling and with just, sometimes I will just talk to text. Just brain dump into my phone. I always feel better. Always.
Yeah, there's actually a very specific technique that was developed called expressive writing. And I think it's really helpful if you're feeling particularly stuck in an emotion. And the process for it is to take 15 minutes and sit down with a pen and paper. And the goal is to not take the pen off the paper. You write for the entire 15 minutes, even if you have to repeat yourself for 15 minutes, that's okay. You're not writing for anyone else. You're just writing for yourself. It's sort of like that brain dump, but it's helpful to focus on one thing that's really helping you. You're feeling stuck on, do that 4 days in a row. And it's amazing what it can do for you. The VA, uses this as well. They teach our servicemen to use stuff like this to help you process emotions that often we don't verbalize, we don't feel comfortable talking about it. And the idea with this writing is that there's no grammar, there's not you don't have to worry. You're simply just consciousness getting it out there, and that can be really helpful for people to do. Another thing I wanted to go back to with the perimenopause, I feel you here. I know exactly what that's like. It's helpful when you're thinking about your emotions and your emotional experience to think about what's called your body budget. And this is the idea that your body, your emotions are influenced by what's going on in your body. And if you didn't get a good night's sleep last night, your hormones have been fluctuating. All of these things can affect your emotions. And so a lot of times we think I'm angry or I'm frustrated. Really, we're tired, or our estrogen is depleted, and so it's helpful to think about the physical nature of emotions, that really it's our mind trying to make sense out of the world inside us and the world outside of us. And we don't have to get wrapped up in all of the emotions. It could really be that we're tired.
Oh, I'm tired. That's accurate. That's an accurate statement. That's funny that you say that, because this week's been particularly difficult, and I had 2 nights of back-to-back insomnia, really bad insomnia. And I didn't put it together until you were just talking. But the next few days after those nights, I couldn't even stand myself. I was unbearable to be around. And I was just exhausted. I was.
Yeah, but in the moment when we're feeling those emotions, when we find ourselves annoying or the people around us unbearable, we don't realize, wait a minute, I'm exhausted. Like, my thoughts are not to be trusted right now. It's just a feeling. It's just a thought. This will pass. When we're in the middle of the storm, we don't even know we're in a storm, though. And so it's helpful to have a practice to go to when we're feeling this triggered, to help us remember, wait a minute, I don't have to trust these thoughts right now.
I've been thinking about this a little bit because, again, perimenopause, my brain is doing things it has never done before. I always felt like I had pretty good control of my brain. So when you're saying we don't have to listen to those thoughts and give them credibility, I'm like, yeah, oh my gosh, we don't. That's so true. But then there's that also, like, listen to your inner voice, trust your inner voice. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I feel like I don't understand where, and Stacy, as a coach, she coaches my daughter, and she was trying to explain this concept to my daughter, like, you are not your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess I'm with Lucy, because I'm like, really? Am I not my brain? Because isn't my brain what kind of runs everything? So I don't even know what my question is here, guys, but I'm really trying to, I guess what I want to know is, how do you know when you need to be listening to what your brain is saying and when you're like, okay, brain, you're not helping right now?
I think that's a great question, because we're at one hand saying, trust everything that's happening, listen to yourself. And on the other hand, we're saying, wait, don't listen to those thoughts though, right?
Right.
And so I think what's helpful is, when you're feeling a really strong emotion, is to remember you don't have to do anything about it right now. And so it's not that we're going to ignore it. It's that we're going to approach with a little more curiosity and think, that's interesting. Okay, like, I'm going to take note of this. Like, I'm feeling really frustrated. I can't stand my husband right now, or whatever it is. It doesn't mean you have to solve that problem. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to divorce your husband today, right? But you could take note and start paying attention. Okay, how often am I feeling this? Is this something that's coming up for me consistently? Then maybe there is something there. Maybe there is something I need, or something that's not getting met. I would say that that's really more is thinking about big picture. And when we're having a really big emotion, it's hard for us to have that perspective. And so I think it's important to have practices that you go to help you process those emotions, and to help you be thinking about the big picture, processing. That's sort of what I would say, sort of the balance. I don't know.
That's good.
No,
that's good. That's good, because I do need to pause and just, okay, so I'm having all these thoughts, I'm having all these feelings. Let me just pause. I don't have to act on anything right now. That right there is my takeaway. I don't have to act on anything right now, because I'm a like, let's just get stuff done. Like, if I'm feeling something, if I'm thinking about something, I want to act on it, But when it comes to emotions, heavy, big emotions, I love it. Being curious, pausing, evaluating, love it.
Any big emotion puts you in fight or flight. You cannot make good decisions in that space.
Yeah.
So when Melissa says, stick a pin in it and let it sit, this is why. Because you have to remove yourself from that place of urgency and put yourself into a place of forward thinking. Get out of your animal brain, get into your I'm an intelligent human who has a brain that works brain. And when you get into that space, then you can say, okay, why did I feel this? what was happening. So yeah, stick a pin in it. Thank you, Melissa. That's beautiful. All right. Another topic, and it's slightly off of where we've been, but it's such an important one. I wanted to bring it up, was preparing for doctor's appointments.
Yes.
Because this is a huge stress for people.
Yeah.
And our audience, oh my word, our audience, this is like one of the things I get more comments from people. How do I do this and not be scared? How do I get myself into a headspace where I can do this? And we're exhausted. We're emotionally exhausted. We're physically exhausted. Chronic illness is a lot. And then to top it all off, we now have to go to a doctor and hope that we're going to be heard.
Yeah.
And not be emotionally like so compromised by the experience that we basically just set a bomb off in the office that destroys our ability to get what we need.
Yes, and I think that's really important. This is such an important conversation for anyone dealing with an autoimmune or a chronic condition. I've worked with people who this is a huge trigger for them. Just the thought of going to the doctor's office, the distrust, the not wanting to be dismissed, the fear they're just going to think I'm crazy, like all of these things that go on, like a lot of mental dialogue when it sort of building up to that. And so there are a few things that people can do. One is to make sure that you're writing things down. So before you go to your appointment, and I've actually coached people where we do this in our session, we go through, okay, what's on your list? Like what is most important? Let's prioritize. So really important to do that. Another is to go with more of a sense of curiosity. Curiosity is huge, and it can be really helpful rather than going in and feeling like you're on the defense, going in with the idea of like, I'm going to ask some questions. I think that's a really helpful place to be. I'm going to try some things I haven't tried before. One of the sort of basic things is to have a practice that helps to calm you down and to break that. It can come with you essentially. I love breathing. I'll come back to that. You can do it when you're on the way to the doctor's appointment, as you're sitting in the waiting room. But if that doesn't speak to you, how about, if you love reading, bringing a book, if you love a game that you can play on your phone, having that, something to take you out of the waiting space there, because that's when like a lot of the pressure and the anxiety is building, to have that, to do that. One thing that's important if you're going to do breathing is to not practice just when the anxiety, just in the moment. Because a lot of people will come back and be like, I did my breathing. I was really stressed out and I did it. And I'm like, that's great. You remembered to use it because that is part of the battle. The other part though, is to use it at times when you feel calm and you feel safe. Our brain learns. Everything we do is part of just learning, and our reactions are learned. And so if we can teach our brain, when I breathe in this pattern, that I'm calm and safe, it helps if you start doing that in a place where you really are calm and safe. Then it becomes almost like this habit the brain has learned, like, I've been here before. I know when I breathe in this way that I'm calm, I can fall into that response much quicker. It becomes just sort of this learned response. So I think it's really helpful to do that. Have that as a toolbox. Like, remember to use it. I'm going to breathe when I'm there. The other thing is to find someone that you trust going in. I think that's key. So that, and feeling comfortable if you don't trust them, finding somebody else. I think we have to give people permission to do that. When you have an experience that is positive, if you go to the doctor and maybe it wasn't perfect, it will never be perfect. But if you went and you were able to ask your questions without getting worked up, you were able to go and remember to calm yourself down in the waiting room. You were able to go and be curious and ask questions rather than, lose it. Those are all successes. And what's really important is that we savor our successes, because again, it helps to solidify the learning process. And so after an appointment, I encourage people to take time, whether it's in your car or when you get home, to reflect. What did you do well? What did you remember to do? What do you want to take from this experience going forward? And give yourself a moment to really experience that. pause, think about how much better you feel having done that versus maybe what you had done in the past or what could have gone wrong. And as we savor it, we just really solidify the learning for the brain. We teach our brain that we can be calm, we can be safe, we can be successful in these appointments. And then the next time it helps to decrease a lot of the anxiety leading up. So it becomes this sort of like we're building on the habit of doing this in a way where we can walk away feeling good about it.
That makes it sustainable.
Yes.
That makes it real change. That really is training your brain. It's practice. It's
Yes.
putting it into practice. I love that. Okay. So I feel like this time flew by and we are already wrapping up, but we want to make sure that we let our listeners know if they would like to get a hold of you, follow your work with you, use your resources. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best place to find my resources and to get in contact with me is my website, which is workingoncalm.com. On there, I have all kinds of articles that walk you through these techniques. My goal was always to offer free resources to those in my community who need this. On there, you can also book free consultation with me. I'm happy to meet with you to decide if it's a good fit, if you'd like to pursue coaching with me or would like some additional support. I also do trainings for organizations if maybe you'd like to bring this into your place of employment. And I have a newsletter sign up on the website as well under newsletter. So I send out newsletters every month called Take 5, where I focus on 5-minute practices that you can start using today to decrease your stress and build your resilience.
So good. So good.
Phenomenal. We will have all of those resources in our show notes, and I will totally be signing up for that newsletter. We are so grateful you joined us today, Melissa. Thank you for reminding us that healing is not about perfection, that it's about becoming more aware of ourselves and our emotions and more compassionate with ourselves. So we appreciate that. And especially you teaching us about the importance of just making small shifts and kind of slowly retraining our brain so that we can make that sustainable. That's very valuable information.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's really, thank you for the work that you're doing. There's a whole community who needs your support. So thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate that. To our audience, if this conversation was something that you related to, that resonated with you, we'd love to have you join us with our newsletter, which is the Scenic Route, where we twice a month will give tips and tricks. We do healthy recipes, gluten-free recipes for people who can't do the gluten, different things like that. You can sign up on our website at autoimmuneadventures.com. And as always, remember, you are worthy of joy. Disease does not define your life. You do.